My old man always told me not to let them know you were coming for them. Just take Route 1, be direct and annihilate them. A man of few if not direct words. Maybe that was something I had forgotten recently, but it was coming. It was on its way. I sat thinking about the events of the recent weeks, and as hard as I tried, I could not identify anything specific that gave me cause to think she was cheating on me. The feeling that filled my being came as a result of lots of little things added together that left me with a sense of unease. There was something going on, but I could not put my finger on it. I was fairly certain something was afoot, yet I had no proof. No idea who, what, or where it was happening, if indeed it was. I had even started to question my own sanity. Was I making too much of things? Overreacting? Maybe imagining all kinds of scenarios? My gut was tying itself in knots. I felt rather than knew something was going on. Maybe it was the very beginning of something. Maybe a one-off. The more I tortured myself with thoughts and imaginings, the more certain I became. Strangely, I had been thinking like this for what seemed like weeks now. How long had whatever it was been going on before I became even slightly aware that something was amiss? I took another slug of my JD. The ice rattled in the glass, telling me it was time for a refill. I caught the bartender's eye and he nodded. He slid along the bar and replaced my glass with another double JD on the rocks. He gave me a half smile as if reading my mind. He had seen the same look many times before. His expression was one part support and yet sympathetic, as he recognized the tortured look behind my eyes. The sweet taste of JD warmed the back of my mouth and throat as I took another gulp. I must take it easy, I resolved as I looked around the bar, taking in the handful of other drinkers. It was quiet, the low murmur of chatter just filling the room with unintelligible words and adding a backdrop to my growing sense of misery. There was no joy here. The faces of the patrons that filled the bar were all bland and unremarkable. No one stood out, all nondescript and average in every way. The only woman in the place, in her 40s at a guess, slightly overdressed for the time of day, looked a little desperate. She was being fed drinks by an older guy who seemed hopeful about the evening. Looking at her, I thought he didn't need to try so hard. She seemed to have already captured his interest. Other souls seemed to be just passing time while the rain outside fell and further dampened spirits. Soon, each would run out of reasons to stay in the sanctuary of the bar and make the journey homeward. I was still undecided about what I was going to do. So what's the story? I turned in the direction of the voice. She looked at me, her eyes boring deep into my soul. I felt like I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. She stood in the dimly lit bar, water dripping from her as she started to slip her coat off. "What are you doing here, Sammy? I was worried about you. I had an idea I would find you here, so here I am. Want to talk?" I looked at her, my mind trying to regain some balance as I stared at her. "Worried about me? Why? What do you mean?" I looked at her, trying to see what she was thinking, concerned she might be trying to catch me out in some way. Could I trust her? I sipped my JD and ordered her a vodka and Coke, which was delivered with some style by the barman, smiling now as he took in the sight of Sammy. She caught his eye as he served her, returning his smile. Sammy waited until the bartender had moved away before she said anything else, her eyes wary as we looked at each other, both unsure and jostling for position and advantage. "Well, it's all to do with the way you've been acting recently. You look like you have the worries of the world on your shoulders. Do you want to tell me what the hell is going on?" I stared into her brown eyes for a moment before looking away. She always could read me like a book, and that was something I always liked about her. We got on. We seemed to get each other somehow. We had arguments, but we never fell out about things. We always were straightforward and honest with each other. Well, to a point. What was left unsaid was just understood, Sammy. "Okay, we're fine. There is nothing to concern yourself about, really?" I looked at her as she processed my words. I could see she wasn't buying it. My heart sank. I had tried to pass it off, but I could tell it wasn't going to work. Sammy took a slow sip of her drink, looking straight into my soul again. Jesus, here it comes, I thought. She placed the glass on the table in front of her, then locked her fingers together as she leaned slightly forward toward me. "I know what's going on." "I don't know what you mean." I tried bluffing. For heaven's sake, Steve, I know. So let's be honest with each other and stop messing around. The bartender caught the last few words. His head twisted around just enough to try to catch more of what he assumed would be something juicy. Let's sit in one of the booths. This is too public for my liking. I saw the disappointed look cross the bartender's face as we stood and moved across the bar into one of the side booths. We sat across from each other like prizefighters waiting for the other to take a swing. Okay, so what is it that you think you know? I tried to deflect. Nice try, Steve. You know you can't lie to me. We've known each other far too long. So tell me about it. You know you need to talk to someone. So come on, let's hear it. I had known Sammy since she was 17. She had always been around and had a sort of crush on me at one time when I started dating her sister Claire, who was 3 years older. We began dating when we were both 20. Sammy and I had always gotten along, much to the annoyance of her older sister. They were as different as chalk and cheese in many ways, but their tempers matched, evidenced by many sibling blow-ups over the years. After 2 years, Claire and I married and settled down to what I thought was an idyllic future. We were both working in decent jobs and earning enough to make life comfortable at least. My sister-in-law Sammy had been having a fun time throughout her late teens and early 20s and now, at the age of 25, was looking for something more mature. I felt she had sown her wild oats and matured into someone that any guy would be lucky to get close to. In my opinion, Claire and I had been married for 5 years. Well, it will be 5 in another month when our anniversary is due, that is, if we make it that far. I saw Sammy as a very attractive woman, and I counted her as a friend as well as my sister-in-law. I looked at her as my eyes started to fill with tears while I searched for the words to explain how I felt. Still, her words echoed in my mind. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine before gripping them tightly, a sign of support and more to me as I felt my heart slowly breaking. Okay, Steve, if you won't say it, then I will. She is cheating on you. I think you know it. I certainly do now. What are you going to do about it? My eyes widened as I heard the words but still refused to comprehend them, stubbornly trying to work out what I knew and what it meant. I didn't want to hear any more. In my mind, if I didn't really know, then it couldn't be happening and therefore couldn't hurt me. I also wouldn't have to deal with it. Sammy looked at me and she saw the glassy-eyed look I gave her. Was it shock or denial? Steve, I love you dearly, but for heaven's sake, wake up. I'm sure it's some kind of misunderstanding or something. I tried to dismiss her, hoping to further delude myself. Sammy's eyes suddenly flashed with frustration. She reached out and slapped me across the face. The bartender looked across, stopping his glass cleaning. Everything okay there? I held up my hand. Yes, sure, no problem here. I moved my hand to my cheek, the heat from the sting making it feel warm. I was sure there was a perfect imprint of Sammy's hand there too. Sorry, Steve, but you infuriate me sometimes. You know how much I care about you. I can't bear to see you being hurt this way. So wise up and man up. This is happening and we need to do something about it. I gulped as I rubbed my cheek. The full force of my situation was starting to dawn on me as the sting from her slap permeated my brain. Okay, I'll start. I'm sure you at least suspect something, but here goes anyway. A few weeks ago I was with her when she got a call on her phone. She left the room to take it, which was an odd thing to do, right? We are sisters, for heaven's sake. What has she got to hide from me? I nodded, fearing the worst, but as I sipped my JD she went on. I just thought it was odd, so when I got a chance I checked her phone. It had no lock code on it. The call was from a guy she had in her contacts listed as Robert. I didn't know of any Robert or Bob, but I thought I would keep an eye out for any recurrence. So who is this Robert or Bob fellow? I asked, trying to rack my brains for any information on that name. I found out who he is after a week or so. He is a guy she used to know years ago, back before she started going out with you. Anyway, it seems he has gotten in touch via one of those social media sites or chat sites or something. Looks like they have been messaging for a few weeks now too, but I didn't know anything about that. All I knew was there were little things that seemed to happen that were keeping us apart somehow. Yes, I know, but that was all part of what they were doing. Nothing obvious, but it just seemed like things were falling into place for them. So it was just a couple of friends messaging each other. We're living old times or something. Yes, it seems like that was how it started. Anyway, you mean something has happened? Something has happened? Yeah. Are you telling me you haven't noticed anything a little suspicious? Only that it seemed like circumstances were conspiring to keep us apart and, of course, the obvious lack of opportunity for any fun. Sammy looked at me with incredulity as if I was being naive. I stared back at her. Steve, I love you dearly, but for heaven's sake, get your head out of the sand. The reality was seeping deeper into my befuddled brain as her words made it more real by the minute. This is serious, I thought. I took another gulp and braced myself. How far has it gone, do you think? Do you know? Sammy looked at me, her eyes flickering before she looked away for a split second. That was all the answer I needed. When? How? Where? I asked quickly, my mind playing catch-up as I felt my frustration starting to brew inside. The race between logic, common sense, and pure anger was off and running. I know she has met him at least 3 times over the past 2 weeks. I wasn't sure at first and only really knew for 2 days ago that it had progressed. I had lunch with one of my girlfriends who works with Claire and she let something slip. I didn't let on at the time and she covered it well, so I let it slide. She met him twice for lunch and at least once for dinner one evening last week. Does that fit in with what you have noticed? I looked at her as I absorbed her words. There were a couple of times recently when I had called her office to arrange a lunchtime meeting. She wasn't there or had just gone out. Was that when she met him? Last week, she had that seminar she just had to attend. It was a late notice thing and arranged for after work. She had gotten home late that night after 12. Thinking back, she had come in saying that it had dragged on and the team had gone for a drink in the hotel bar to unwind before leaving. No intimacy that night, I remembered, and she hit the shower before bed. My mind was racing. My brain scrambled as I took in these hurtful facts, each one piling on the agony and twisting the knife firmly embedded in my heart. Screw this. I suddenly spat. Sammy looked at me, her eyes now showing concern. Steve, what are you gonna do? Don't do anything stupid. It's not worth getting yourself into trouble with the law. I looked at her. I could sense from her expression that she had seen the change in me. My face felt like stone. My heart now a granite block. My body was preparing itself for what was to come, and she could see it. Screw it. I will not put up with this in any way. It will stop. I will stop it. There is no room in my life for betrayal. She will pay. He will pay too. My eyes glazed over as the anger inside built. My muscles tensed. Fists tightened. I was never a violent guy. I had my share of confrontations when younger, but never looked for trouble. Sometimes you need to step up and face things, which is what I was prepared to do. I was just a little out of practice, but that was going to change fast. Steve, whatever it is you have in mind, take a step back. Think about it. Don't rush in without a plan, or it will all go to hell. You need to think and prepare, or you will end up getting burned. Her words soaked through my rage, seeping into the sensible part of my brain, making sense in a weird way. It helped me calm down a bit, and realize that what I had been suspecting was indeed true. So I wasn't going crazy, at least. Is that where you think she is now? I looked across at Sammy. I could see her eyes had filled with tears, which started their lonely track down her face. Yes, I know she is now. That's why I came looking for you. I felt the rage stirring again. My fist thumped the table, causing several people in the bar to turn and look. I raised my hand to the bartender, who gave me that half smile again. How the hell did he know? Do you know where? I asked, more in hope than anything else. No, I don't have a clue, but I will see my girlfriend again tomorrow and find out what I can. I know he is married with a couple of kids, though. I'm not sure where he lives, but I will do what I can to find out if it helps. I reached for her hand, holding it tightly as I brushed a tear from her cheek. Thank you, Sammy. I know this is hard for you, but I do appreciate it. Really, I do. What will you do? She looked at me worriedly. I know I can't do what I want to, at least not yet, but I will put an end to this, and when I do, it will be final and there will be consequences. No remorse, but they will both pay. In the meantime, I will secure what is mine, get the evidence I need for whatever I decide to do next. Sammy looked at me with concern as I finished my drink. I caught the bartender's eye and he poured another for each of us. As he shuffled over, I could see Sammy wanted to say something. I held my hand up to stop her until the drinks were served. I slid a note to him, telling him to keep the change. He nodded and left. So how long before you confront her? I have a lot to consider. I will make a couple of calls tomorrow. I need to secure my assets, and I'll ensure that she does not get a penny from me. Not one penny. You know it will be difficult to be around her, don't you? Yes, I realize that, but it has been like that in a way for the past few weeks anyway. I'm guessing if she hasn't noticed now, she won't see any change. Sammy gulped her drink down and stood. I have to go, Steve. Can we talk again tomorrow? I will find out what I can for you. She slipped her coat back on and I stood and helped her, feeling her closeness. Damn, she looked so much like her sister. She looked up at me, and I could see the tears in her eyes as I kissed her cheek. Go home. I will be fine. I will call you tomorrow. She smiled and turned away. I watched her step through the door and into the dark, wet evening. I breathed a deep sigh as I sat down, wondering what to do now. One thing was certain. They will pay, and it will be swift, relentless, and unforgiving. I don't recall much after that. Somehow, I woke in my own bed with a mouth like the bottom of a parrot's cage. My head was still swimming as I raised it off the bed. Rolling over, I noticed I was alone and there was no sign of Claire. My senses slowly awakened as I heard noises from downstairs. Sliding my feet over the side of the bed, I tried to stand. Oh my, what did I do to myself last night? I thought. I staggered to the bathroom and started to rouse myself from the aftermath of my JD haze. I wandered downstairs in a daze of pain. My joints ached. Everything seemed to hurt. Stepping into the kitchen, I saw her. Hello, love. What did you get up to last night to get into that state? Wouldn't you like to know? Had a drink with an old mate, that's all. Got carried away. I sat and poured orange juice, swallowed it, and went for another. Oh, really? Who was that? Anyone I know. My mind clicked into gear. No, I don't think so. It was Bob. I knew him from way back, haven't seen him in years, and he is in town for a couple of days on business. Bob. There was just a flicker of something in her face as she turned. Yes, I'm sure you may remember him. Thinking about it, I added, we were at college together, played football for a couple of years. Tall guy, dark hair. He asked after you. Claire looked puzzled. Sorry, I don't recall a Bob. Still, as long as you had fun. Strike one. She sat opposite me at the table. I looked at her as I thought of my talk with Sammy last night. So honey, what did you get up to last night? Anything exciting? What time did you get in? She looked me in the eye as she lied. Oh, nothing much really. I finished up at work, and then a couple of us went for a light meal and a drink. I was in by 9:30. I was getting worried about you, but then I remembered you had a late meeting. I knew she wasn't home by then because I was still home at 10 p.m. That's when I had enough and went to the bar. Strike two. I have some things I need to get done this morning, so I will shower and get on my way. I may be late this evening, so don't wait up. Bob said he would be in touch. We still have some catching up to do. You will have to invite him over if he is here for a few days. It's nice to catch up with old friends. Sure, I will do that. You must remember him, love. She looked at me blankly, her face trying not to react or give anything away, but she felt something. I could see it. Maybe it will come back to me later, love. Now get moving or you will be late. Do you want me to drive you? You did have a few last night. No, it's fine. I have to get a cab and collect my car anyway. As I recall, I left it at the bar. So thanks anyway. I went off to get dressed after more orange juice and a couple of painkillers. I left the house 30 minutes later as Claire was getting ready. I had a busy day ahead. One thing was for sure. This was not going to go on for long. I gritted my teeth as I thought of Claire with this Bob character. My fists balled up. He was going to pay. I was going to crush the worm. Work was chaotic. I had call after call to deal with issues on the line. My secretary fielded some, but there were meetings I needed to be a part of, so I couldn't duck any of those. By mid-morning the initial rush eased off, and I had some almost free time to deal with my personal issues. I closed my office door and started to check out my financials. Within 15 minutes, I had tightened the purse strings and moved some cash out of reach. I also arranged a meeting with a solicitor to discuss a possible divorce. I still had a few days before that, so my thinking was that it would give me time to get more information. Not that it would matter that much anyway, but it could give me some leverage. Claire had her own bank account and credit card, so there was no need to do anything there. It was access to our joint account that was of concern, but I plugged that loophole quickly, so if it came to it, she couldn't get any more than what was left. My own account was secure and only had a small balance. The rest was shifted out and safe. We had no children, so essentially it would be a straightforward split should it come to that. I had decided in my own mind that we could only get over this if Claire were to confess her mistakes and seek forgiveness. Any kind of reticence there and we were done. That thought made me feel sad. I sat at my desk in silence, mulling over what had transpired and the actions I had taken so far today. I needed more information on the Bob character and evidence, or would the fact that I knew about it be enough to really complicate things for the two of them? The phone rang, breaking my reverie. Yes, it's me. Sammy, how are you? Oh, busy with stuff. Thoughts, plans, all of that and more. Basically confused as to why, but I have started things moving. I found out more about this guy from my girlfriend. His name is Bob Stones. He's married. I have his address and where he works too. I managed to get it without letting on what was happening. My friend knows Claire and has seen her with him recently. From what she says, they seem to be getting pretty close with each other. As much as they try to hide it, the signs are there. She says, has she seen them together? Yes, they were at the Rada the other evening after the seminar. They stayed on after everyone else left. She said they looked cozy with each other. Well, at least that's a start. I'm sure they have CCTV there if needed. Anyway, give me his details. I need to get on with this. It's chewing me up inside. I don't know how long I can keep it in. Sammy passed over the details and within a few minutes I had found his social media page and had a photo of him. That's when I thought I remembered his face. It was familiar, but where and when did I see that face before? I looked at the clock. It was almost lunchtime, and I decided to give Claire a call to maybe meet up or just to stir the pot a little. My heart was cold as I made the call, and the knot in my stomach seemed to swell, fit to burst as I heard her answer. Hi, honey, she said, recognizing my number. Hello, babe. What are you doing for lunch? I thought we could meet up if you're free. Oh, sorry, honey. I have a meeting scheduled in 30 minutes that will go on through the afternoon. I was going to grab something quick from the deli next door. That's okay. What's the meeting about? Anything exciting? Same old routine stuff with a new client. That's all. A Mr. Stones, she said. Her words cut through me like a knife. It felt like she was almost rubbing it in my face. I held my breath for a few seconds while I tried to keep it together. Honey, are you there? Yes, I am here, I replied. Sorry, was distracted by something I just thought of. Look, I have to go and I know you need to get yourself ready for your two. So have fun and I will see you later, okay? Bye, love you. Bye. I put the phone down, seething. I sat grinding my teeth when my secretary popped her head around the door. Steve, I am going to that deli down the street. Do you want me to get you something? I thought for a moment. Yes, get me anything. Surprise me as long as it's big and has lots of red meat inside. I'm in the mood for something hearty. She looked at me strangely and nodded as she closed the door. She thought her boss was acting a little strangely. He had been focused all morning, businesslike. Yes, but there was also something else brewing. Sammy called by her sister's office, and as she strolled into the foyer, she saw her sister step out of the elevator, walking toward the front door alongside a tall, dark-haired man who looked to be about 30, a couple of years older than her. She recognized him after seeing his photo online, Bob Stones. She stepped in front of her sister, who jumped in surprise. Sammy, what are you doing here? Sammy looked at her sister, seeing her discomfort at her obvious plans being interrupted. Just thought I would drop in and see my sister and maybe go for lunch. She smiled innocently. Well, me and Mr. Stones here are having a business lunch, so maybe another time. He held out his hand. Bob Stones, nice to meet you. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Stones. Have you known Claire long? He looked a little flummoxed at her question. Claire started to pull him away. Look, Sammy, we have to go. We have a meeting. Catch up soon. Sammy smiled as she watched the couple go out the door and into a waiting cab. She caught her sister looking back at her as it pulled away. I sat in my office, chewing my way through a huge sub. It was filled with red meat, and I smiled to myself as I savored it slowly, thinking of my next steps. Sammy had confirmed that Claire had left her office, so I called her secretary and found out she was going out all afternoon. Well, isn't that just great? Everything was set as far as my finances were concerned. I had a locksmith on speed dial and had agreed on what was required in advance. My solicitor was primed and ready to fire as soon as I gave him the rest of the information he had asked for. Okay, tonight was going to be the first stage. I was going to really mess with the two of them for a little while before I pulled the trigger. My old man always told me not to let them know you were coming for them. Just take Route 1, be direct and annihilate them. A man of few if not direct words. Maybe that was something I had forgotten recently, but it was coming. It was on its way. That evening I was home when Claire came through the door. She looked fine, nothing out of place, and smelled normal too until I went to kiss her. It was unmistakable. A man's cologne, faint but still there. She saw me look at her, but I said nothing. I gave her a light kiss on the cheek and headed for the door. Where are you off to? Are you okay? Yes, I am fine. I have a problem I need to deal with, that's all. Just popping round to Jerry's. He invited me over for poker with a couple of the guys from work. I thought it would do me good. Won't be too late. I closed the door behind me and, grinding my teeth, got in my car and slipped down the driveway. I drove to Jerry's, pulling up outside his place. He ushered me through the door and into his garage. Jerry and I go way back. He has always sailed close to the wind, had his issues with the police in the past, but given his particular brand of combat training, he was the ideal friend for what I had in mind. You don't mess around with a cage fighter. Jerry was a big guy. 6 feet 3 inches and 200 pounds of muscle. Not the sort of guy to mess with, believe me. With a temper to match his size, he was formidable. Yet we had been firm friends since school. I had called Jerry earlier and he had offered his help in any way. No questions asked, no matter what I needed. That sort of support was invaluable. We quickly slipped into the garage, where I changed into a pair of dark overalls and a matching ski mask. We looked like two men in a heist movie, standing and looking at each other. No words were exchanged as we got into a nondescript second-hand car he had acquired. Nothing remarkable or noticeable about it. We cruised slowly across town to the address Sammy had given me, still silent. We had agreed on the plan beforehand, so there was no need for further conversation. Jerry stopped the car outside Bob Stone's home. There was no sign of life as far as we could see. We waited in silence until the front door opened. We saw him step out, get into his car and ease down the road. Jerry followed at a safe distance. We already knew where he was going, so there was no rush or panic. Parking at the driving range was easy. We stayed in the car as Bob Stone went for his customary 50-ball bucket. It was something he did every week, apparently. Amazing what you can find out online if you know where to look. We settled back and the radio was on. Kenny Rogers played quietly. Jerry looked at me as the words fell from the radio and reached out to turn it off. We sat watching and waiting. The tension inside me was almost unbearable. It was difficult to keep still and not step out and walk around, but that was risky. The car park began to empty, until only a couple of other cars were left. We tensed as we saw him making his way to his car. Jerry got out and stealthily approached the target. Bob Stones was still reliving the last shot of his practice when he lifted the lid of his trunk to put his clubs inside. Jerry swiftly moved in and shoved him into the trunk along with his clubs. One well-aimed punch to the jaw was all it took to silence him. Jerry took over, and for the next 30 seconds, Bob Stones experienced severe pain in the confines of his own car. Satisfied he had used the human punching bag just enough, Jerry switched his attention to Mr. Stone's abdomen. Several quick blows left him reeling before he passed out. Jerry slammed the trunk down and quickly returned to the car, where I drove us out of the parking lot quietly and without fuss. That went very well, Jerry mused as he pulled off his gloves and mask. Thanks, Jerry. I really appreciate that. Don't worry, pal. Anytime. I still owe you and could never repay you for what you did for me. Well, that's what friends are for.